Hi, this is Kevin, and this week we had a great guest on, Sue Kolinsky, a very successful TV writer and producer whose credits include The Osbournes, The Ellen Show, and many other interesting shows that we talked about in great detail. In fact, we talked so long that what we thought was going to be one episode turned into 2 podcast episodes. So in this first half, the one you'll hear today, we're going to be talking about current events and what's going on in the news of the week. And in part 2, which will air later this month, you'll hear about Sue's career and Ward's career in comedy and a little bit about my career in comedy, and that made for a great conversation as well. So enjoy part 1, and we'll let you know when part 2 is coming up. Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, along with Greg Matusak and Ward Anderson. Hi, guys.
Hey, Kevin. Hello, Ward. Look at you.
Look at you. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And today we have what we consider a very special More Perfect Union because we are joined by a very old friend of mine, Sue Kolinsky, a very successful producer and television writer whose credits include, and we're going to talk later in the show more about all of this. But Sue has worked on Sex and the City. She produced The Osbournes. She worked on The Ellen Show, Top Chef. I understand that she's done another recent cooking show for Netflix. And she also has a very successful podcast of her own called the Culture Pop Podcast that she co-hosts with Steve Mason from ESPN. And I think he's also done the Mason in Ireland show, right, Sue?
Yes, he currently does that.
So, hey, how you doing, Sue? Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. God, Kevin, it's been forever.
It has been a long time. Sue and I started in stand-up comedy together in the 1980s. And again, in the second half of the show, we're going to talk a lot more about our mutual experiences in comedy. And Ward is going to share some of his experience. And Greg is just going to be pissed off because we're going to drop a lot of names.
I'm happy Sue's here. I'm just in awe of someone finally successful. No offense, Ward. Although Kevin is super cool. He tells me all these jazz stories too. But Sue has all sorts of cool things on her rap, and it's so nice to have someone who's not, Kevin here. So welcome to the show, Sue. Thank you so much. And I've always thought of myself as a Charlotte. So, and you can tell me by the end if I'm right or wrong.
I will.
A Charlotte.
So before we go into our little news roundup of the week, I want to share one Sue story that is my personal favorite, although I've known Sue for many, many years. But this one is cool to me because in 1989, I went to Europe for the first time. It was my backpacking hike, even though I was in my late 20s by that time. And I'm going to different cities, and now I'm in Barcelona, and I hear that the Picasso Museum is the place to go in Barcelona. So I go to the Picasso Museum, and I'm on this long line. That's one of those lines that winds back and forth because there's so many people waiting. And as I'm walking down the line, I see coming in the other direction is Sue Kolinsky in Barcelona. And we're looking at each other like, what are you doing here?
The funny thing is that I was with my girlfriend, who's a childhood friend that I'd known since junior high school. So she saw you looking at me. I didn't see you right away. And she's like, there's this guy who's looking at you, not creepy, but he's looking at you like he knows you. And I turn and I was like, oh God, it's Kevin Kelton. And then we ended up hanging out for 3-4 days. I mean, we hung out. We went to Easter Mass together.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Beautiful, beautiful church.
Right.
So that was great. And then there was a whole group of people. Well, they were people that you had met.
Right. I had hooked up with a group of people who were like-minded single people, and we were traveling together. So, yeah, we became a little clique for a few days. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was fun. And so now, talking about people who are meeting together in their old age, Tyson and Jones went at it last night, as we do this podcast, in some kind of heavyweight charity match or whatever it was. Although I think they were the charities. Did you guys? Did anybody pay to see this? That you know?
No.
No.
No. I had no interest in seeing it. But what I loved about this story is that Tyson smoked weed before the fight.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Oh,
yeah,
cool.
I heard that.
which I love. And then I was thinking that if it had been in Denver, maybe he would have ate mushrooms.
But that seems so weird to me, because doesn't that cut down on your reaction time? I mean, that's how weed is for me. It makes me pretty good when it comes to creativity things or whatever, when you have plenty of time and you could just create and throw things out there. But if you threw a ball for me to catch, I'd fail miserably at it. So that just seems an odd thing before a fight.
Well, so from what I understand, Mike Tyson smokes weed every day. So, I mean, it's like his thing.
Right.
But, I don't watch, I'm not a boxing aficionado. I'm not a big fan of, it's a sport of kings. I understand. It's what people do. But growing up, Mike Tyson was the boxer. I know for a lot of people it was Muhammad Ali or George Foreman, but all the video games were Mike Tyson, and he was the guy. So it's kind of neat to see him. And I understand he has a violent past, and maybe he's not he's not the role model he should have been. But it was awesome. Mike Tyson was incredible. And, to see those 14-second knockouts, and it kind of gives me hope, because how old is he now?
He's 54.
He's 54. So I'm 48 years old. So maybe I could get in shape like Mike Tyson now. I've got 6 years.
Dream on, my friend.
If you got lots of time on your hand, I mean,
I do. I could start raising doves. I could start, I could do all those things. I thought it was kind of neat. But it's nostalgic at the very least. George Foreman, he got the heavyweight title at 45, and actually it was 46, but he doesn't hold the record. Someone actually holds the record of light heavyweight title at 48, and I can't remember his name. But I mean, yes, old people still are doing things. I mean, I consider myself an old person, so I'm not going to go out and start boxing, but.
And from the reports, he looked pretty good in the ring. That's every article I read on it said he looked kind of sharp for a guy his age.
Oh, and he killed Jones. I saw the replays. I mean, they called it a split decision.
They called it a draw, but apparently Tyson. I mean, this guy was in fear. They said this Jones guy, who I had never heard of before I was reading these.
Oh yeah,
you never heard of Roy Jones?
No.
Oh yeah, Roy Jones retired 2 years ago. And on top of that, Tyson gave $1 million to charity, which is awesome.
I can tell you this. I've never officially met Mike Tyson, but at Fan Expo in Toronto, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing like Q&As, and I was hosting a lot of the panels with the celebrities and stuff. And I was in a back hallway, where like the catering and the staff run through and all that, waiting backstage, getting ready to interview somebody. And Mike Tyson walked by with his entourage. And I have never in my life been so intimidated by somebody just passing by. That guy has a presence about him. And he was just he was walking through at a brisk pace. So he was in a hurry or whatever. Nothing unfriendly, nothing confrontational, nothing like that. But he was just in a hurry. He was going where he was going. He had an entourage around him. And everywhere he went, that shit parted like the Red Sea. There was just something. He has such a presence that even just him walking towards a room full of people, everyone in the room just stopped what they were doing, got out of the way, and just stared as he walked by.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me $1 million to get into a ring with him at 54 years old.
You can't pay. I took boxing lessons for years, not kickboxing, like regular boxing. And I went into the ring a couple of times and sparred. But my opponent, and, we had, helmets on, and they weren't allowed to counter me. I was just able to, punch them. But every now and then, instinct would come in, and they would go to hit me. And it was like, no, you're not supposed to hit her. And these guys were just a bunch of, neighborhood guys, nobody's professional at this place. And it was pretty scary. So I could never imagine actually being in a ring with a professional fighter.
I've heard people say, I don't want to get in a ring with that guy. I don't want to get in an argument with that guy.
Yeah, I don't even want to get into a Twitter war with that guy.
I have a Mike Tyson story.
Oh, okay. Because he's changed a lot, too. He's like a funny guy now.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
he had a one-man show on Broadway, and he's got an incredible sense of humor. That
he was great in the
never knew.
Anchorman movies. Not Anchorman, excuse me.
Hangover.
The Hangover
Hangover.
movies. Thank you. The Hangover
Right.
movies. But here's my story. So 20 years ago, when I was married to the woman who's now my ex-wife, she was a talent manager. And one of her clients was Evander Holyfield. And so because she was representing him in the entertainment world, not as a boxing manager, but because she had this reputation of representing him, and Mike Tyson at that point, was out of boxing and was not as tied into entertainment as he is now. Apparently, he found out about her and he contacted her, had his people contact her about potentially representing him. And this was right around the time of like Robin Givens and everything. And I said, no, you're not representing Mike Tyson. So I stopped my ex-wife from having that client.
Oh, that's too bad.
And that's why he bit Evander Holyfield's ear off, because of you.
Because of
you, Kevin.
But I did hang out with Evander because he was my wife's client. We went clubbing together, and I went to a party at his house. And
was he a nice guy?
Very nice. Very nice guy.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
I figured he always seemed like a gentleman. Like he would like take the chair out for me and open the doors for me.
Yeah, he was pretty cool.
Not that I expect that from all my dates, but Evander Holyfield.
Do you guys remember Buster Douglas?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
He's the one who beat Tyson. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am doing a gig at the MGM Grand, and there's a big fight with it was Scholes and George Foreman. Scholes was the German fighter.
Yeah.
So they're having a weigh-in. So I invited my sister to come to the show. So we're hanging out, waiting for the weigh-in to start, and everybody's jockeying for position to get into the front row of apart from where the stage was. So this guy comes over, black guy, stocky, and he stands right in front of me. And I looked at him and I said, "Don't even think about it." And all these people were looking at me like, "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" And they couldn't believe like the balls on me to say something like this to Buster Douglas Jr. And I was like, I had no idea who it was. So he went, "Whoa," and then he walked away. Then I see him standing by the stage, and I had like a rinky-dink, stupid little camera, like an Instamatic camera. And I was too far away. So I was calling for him to come and take the camera and take a picture up close for me. So I was like, Buster. If people are looking at me like, you have so much nerve, like you're going to ask him to take a picture. And he looked at me and I said, "Could you please take a picture for me?" And he kind of like cocked his head like, "You're ridiculous," And then he came over and he took the camera and he took a picture. And then, we talked afterwards. I invited him to the show. He put his arm around me. He never came to the show, but he ended up being a funny guy. But I had no idea who he was.
Very cool.
I just wanted to say this is proof how little I know about sports and about how my whole life revolves around entertainment. Because Sue just said, "So we're waiting for the weigh-ins," and I'm thinking, was it Keenan or was it Damon? I'm like, so Damon was coming to the fight to see you? What's going on here?
Yes, it's all 8 of them.
So we could probably talk forever about boxing, but other things have been in the news this week. But
we weren't actually talking about boxing.
We were talking about us and trying to use boxing to make us all more impressive.
Yeah. We talked about boxing the same way I do when I'm making something on my Foreman grill.
The first woman college football player from a power conference team, Sarah Fuller, kicked, I guess, the opening kickoff. Is that what happened?
I think it was it the opening kickoff or was it later? I think.
Maybe it was later in the game.
I think it was later in the game.
Yeah. So is that a big deal? It's a big deal to me that a woman has now broken that, as they say, glass barrier of college football.
Sure. I mean, why wouldn't it be?
I mean, anytime a woman, kind of swims in waters where they're not usually welcome to, it's a big deal. With all due respect, the kick was kind of crappy. It wasn't the greatest kick. The fact that she did it, look, I'm a huge sports fan. I don't know how much you know that about me, Kevin. But
I know that. I do know that.
Fan. So I think it's pretty cool, But then I think, where's this going? Like she did it. But do you actually expect to see women playing with men in college sports? I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Not in football.
Not in football. And that's my point was basically that I think it's great, but I don't know if football is the sport that a woman is going to be a part of.
Okay, so I'll play devil's advocate here, which Greg always loves. But why couldn't a solidly built, very athletic woman be a running back or be a quarterback? Why is that impossible?
I just think that the way men are built and the way women are built, I think you're asking for a lot of trouble, and I think it's very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And there's two sides to it. I think that if a woman, say a cook, she's the kicker. If a guy rushes the kicker, if a male player rushes the kicker and is maybe a little too aggressive, I think they're kind of fucked either way.
Yeah,
you know
right,
what I mean?
Right.
They're
going to call it a cheap shot.
They're going to call it a cheap shot, or they're going to say he didn't want to because she was a woman.
So you're right. I tend to agree with you about football. Football may not be the sport for the glass ceiling to shatter. Okay, we definitely cracked it a little bit. So what sports could you see being completely gender integrated?
I could see tennis. I could see
golf. Golf I could see. Although tennis, it's funny because I think it was the Williams sisters. They themselves said there was such a difference in speed right now between men and women that they themselves said they couldn't see that happening.
I could see baseball.
Baseball.
To be really honest with you. If you've watched some women's baseball or even softball,
yeah,
you're going to see some amazing athletes there that I'm not saying that every single role can be reversed, or every single position can be played by either or whatever. But there's plenty that women can do in Major League Baseball that would fit seamlessly with what's going on now. I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying there's a lot of things in baseball because they just named a general manager.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
First female general manager.
The reason I say no with football and things like that is because it's a full contact sport. It is just a plain different beast in that respect. Same thing with boxing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think
that wouldn't look good, a man punching a woman in the ring.
And I don't think, because we watch it on TV and everyone's all padded up and everything like that, I don't think people really do understand just how violent American football is. It is a very violent. There's a reason that these people who play this sport are coming out brain damaged at 50, 55. We're not talking about a bunch of kids in the backyard playing tackle football. We're talking about 300-pound grown adults slamming into each other like a battering ram. It's just a different weight class. I mean,
right.
Maybe there's a 300-pound woman out there who could handle the exact same role. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I'm not saying I'm not for it. I'm not saying I'm not going for it, but it is a different beast when you're talking about, in general, when it comes to full contact sports.
Right. And I think the question posed was more, not so much about the coaching staff or management, because I think that, of course, goes without saying that any job a man can do, of course, a woman could do equally, if not better than a man on that. But right now, I think we should limit this conversation to playing.
Basketball. Okay. I think there's plenty of female basketball players that are just as quick and just as dexterous and just as adept at that alongside men. They would do just as well. I mean, there's no reason to think that couldn't be co-ed. Soccer, I think, could be. Yeah.
Women's soccer in America has been doing great, while the men's soccer team has been, shall we just say, lagging.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of co-ed sports, apparently chess is booming now after the Queen's Gambit became a hit on Netflix. Any Queen's Gambit fans here?
I loved it.
Yeah. I got through halfway, so no spoilers. The fashion was fabulous. There was a couple threads that I'm still not convinced on, but those are my issues.
Okay. Anybody here a good chess player?
I'm like, well, after seeing the movie, after seeing the series, horrible chess player. But in
I know how to castle.
My mind prior to the show, I was pretty good.
Yeah, I technically know how to play.
Yeah, I've read the Bobby Fischer book, forwards and backwards.
I was in the chess club. I was not really good, but I was in the chess club.
I got beat up by the chess club.
I don't doubt it.
Wow. Hey. I wouldn't tell that to too many people.
We went to a rough school. They must
have been.
That was a tough school. I mean, they were tough kids.
That's like getting beaten up by the AV squad guys. You know?
You won't mess with our AV squad kids. They made our chess club look like the Quiz Bowl kids. Woo. They were badass.
So this week we are happy to welcome back as a regular sponsor of the More Perfect Union, BetterHelp, the website that provides therapy right in the privacy of your own home. So what interferes with your happiness? Is there something preventing you from achieving your goals? If there is, BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. They connect you in a safe and private online environment, so it's really convenient. You can send a message to your counselor anytime. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you could schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And it's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. And there is a broad range of counseling expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start living a happier life today. So as a listener, you can get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor, BetterHelp.com/moreperfect. Join over 1 million people who have already taken charge of their own mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/moreperfect. Check them out today. So you know who I think a lot of people on television would like to beat up today? And I mean metaphorically, I don't mean really. After her performance.
Is it me as usual? Because I'd like a break for a change.
Maria Bartiromo apparently now is the enemy of civilization because of the interview that she did with Diaper Don.
What happened to her? I mean, I remember when she first came out and she was on Moneyline, the Money Honey. She was cool. She seemed like she, was opinionated and, kind of moved to her own beat and was smart. I just don't get it. I mean, it's even on such a global scale. I just don't know what this asshole has over all these people. It's like somebody drank a potion. They all drank it. And they've all just enabled him. And I mean, that interview, which was not really an interview, was basically a monologue. He just went off on it. She didn't challenge one point about all these accusations that he was making. She just allowed him to just keep on going.
She also asked some genuinely stupid questions that showed that she didn't even understand the thing she was talking about. There were certain questions she asked when it came to the Supreme Court that he would answer that you would go, the Supreme Court doesn't work that way. It was a strange thing to watch. Even if you get past the sycophant part of it or the kissing Trump's ass part of it, there were parts that I was like, okay, someone in your position should at least know that this isn't how the Supreme Court works.
Yeah, at one point she asked him, so where's the Department of Justice been, or where's the FBI been? Now, these are groups that work for him, right? And he literally at that point said, I don't know. It's been terrible. Now, that should have been the tip-off that this was ridiculous. Now, why did she do this? Let's go back to that question. 73 million people. That's why she did it. The Trump people obviously came to her and said, look, we will do this interview if you do not ask why, you do not ask when, you do not ask who, if you smile, if you do North Korean pink lady stuff.
Oh, I don't think they had to. I don't think they had to prep her. I think that she was in without anybody asking her what to do or how to do this interview.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
Yeah,
do not ask about the depends and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there are just so many people like that young attorney that is in his camp now.
The one that was on Bill Maher a couple of weeks ago?
Yes. And you look at interviews that she had years ago and the things that she said. I mean, it was like Lindsey Graham scathing, remarks and, just talking about how incompetent and how, just the most disparaging things you could possibly say about a person coming from a lawyer. And now she's just right there. It's like she never said it. And I know this wasn't the question, but I just don't get it.
No one does. And so I'm going to try to answer that question because I think about this a lot. I think everybody thinks about it a lot. I think, people say that they must be stupid. There's a lot of stupid people in the country. There's 73 million stupid people. I used to think that myself, and I'm evolving on this in my own mind. Maria Bartiromo is not a stupid woman. And that attorney, who I don't know other than from this case, is obviously a sharp attorney. And yet I do think they believe what they're saying, and I do think they believe what the president is selling. So it's a sociological or a psychological question as to why we sit here, and it's so obvious to us that he's a con man and a charlatan, and yet some people just don't see it that way.
Okay, so there's two camps, I see it as, okay? There's one camp that sees it as a con, okay? So like Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich is a very smart person, okay? He knows what's going on. He's in on the con. He's always been in on the con. The other group, there was a great article, and I'm trying to remember who wrote it, about how America, especially white America, is coming to terms with the fact that maybe we aren't the greatest people. Maybe white people really aren't awesome. We're coming to terms with the fact that the Constitution has all sorts of racist things written in. Maybe a lot of American, slavery, the civil rights, there's all sorts of racist things. And the only way we can get out of it was a reality show TV person saying, you know what? We are okay. We are the best people. And if you vote for me, I will do exactly what Reagan said, who, by the way, super racist also, make America great again. And they did it. They did exactly it. Rather than come to terms with the fact that in another 10 to 15 years, they're going to be the minorities, which I think it was these feelings of, whiteness and insecurity. They cannot get over that.
Well, it's so, I grew up in New York. So I grew up, knowing about Trump and his family.
Yeah.
I lived in Queens where his father owned a lot of buildings. Trump organization basically owned a lot of buildings. They did not rent to blacks. They did not rent to Jews. I mean, I have known this my entire life, and anyone who lived in New York has known this. The thing is that's just mind-boggling to me is that there are a lot of people, like you look at someone like Lindsey Graham, who said the things that he said. This attorney. You look at how Marco Rubio was treated. Look at how Ted Cruz was treated. All of these guys know that Trump is a horrible, horrible person. They know that he was not right for the job. He wasn't skilled enough to be president, but he was the candidate. So they just had to go along and back him because what else were they going to do? He was the representative of the Republican Party. But what I don't understand, well, I guess it's not so much what I don't understand. I know that they're all, worried about their jobs. So they're afraid to say anything or do anything because the base is so strong that if they do go against Trump, it can damage their political aspirations, Yep. So
it's no longer their party. It's
Trump's party.
It's Trump's party. What's Reagan's 11th commandment?
Well, the proof is in the pudding. Look, the people who stood up to Donald Trump, and there's a litany of them, have all paid a price. Some have paid a horrible price, whether it was Jeff Flake, whether it was Alex Vindman. I'm bastardizing his name, but you know who I'm talking about.
Alexander Vindman.
Yeah, you got it right.
The people that worked in his cabinet, like John Kelly and Mattis, they're still okay, but their reputations took a hit. when they went up
Sessions.
against him. Jeff
John
Sessions.
Bolton, John Kasich.
John Bolton is not the darling of the right that he used to be. So, and Trump is vindictive. And by the way, he's going to be even worse once he's out of office without the power, but he still can flout that. If he decides to primary you, if he decides to be on the side of whoever is primarying you, you are going to lose. And they're going to be still living in fear of him even after he's out of the White House.
Yeah, and it's baffling to me. It's all baffling to me because I, honest to God, don't know how anyone sees him and doesn't see an opportunist and a charlatan. And I'm not even talking about in terms of, oh, I hate his politics or, oh, blah, 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 blah. I don't think there's anything genuine about Donald Trump. And that's the worst part about it, is that I try to tell people go, you know, he believes this and he believes that. And I don't think he believes a goddamn thing. I honestly think he's an opportunist who, I still, when people talk about him running in 2024 and he just wants to stay in power and all that, I go, I still maintain he never wanted to be president, and he doesn't like being president, and he doesn't want to be president again. I think he did everything he could to lose that in 2016, was baffled he didn't. And I think he did everything he could to lose in 2020 and knew he wouldn't. And all this shit now with the recounts and all that and the lawsuits and the rigged and all that, I think he's playing his part as he knows he has to, because he will lose that income he gets from that base if he stops playing the role. But I don't think he wanted this job then. I don't think he wants it now. I don't think that was ever what mattered to him. I don't even think power, quote unquote, power matters to him in the sense of how a politician wields it. I think power matters to him in terms of adoration. Right. And I think that's the part of him that's always like that. So that's the part of me whenever anyone likes Trump, I just go, I don't know why, because I just don't find anything genuine about him. Forget politics for a minute. If he were a Democrat, I'd say the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
I don't think he believes in a goddamn thing but himself.
Amen.
Yeah, totally.
Preach.
You know, the guy, I mean, he stole from his own charity.
A charity for kids.
I mean, he is the
kids
most
with cancer,
despicable person on the planet. But you know who I blame for all of this? Mark Burnett.
Yeah.
Mark Burnett created a monster. Because that's how people got to know Donald Trump. They knew
but
him
on
from
top
The
of
Apprentice.
that, Burnett supposedly is sitting on all kinds of audio and video that would ruin Donald Trump that he will never release, despite the fact he could. But all Donald Trump did, that build the wall thing, I've heard people go, yeah, all of a sudden he pulled, I'm going to build a big wall out of his ass. And I go, oh my God, 10 years I listened to people calling in AM radio talking about we need a big wall. That's all he did. Donald Trump is not the party of Trump. The Republican Party has become the party that they were winking and nodding at in order to get that zealot, racist, angry, bitter, older white base. They've just become what they were secretly becoming anyway. And yes, there are many Republicans that aren't racist, xenophobic, crazy, blah, blah. There are plenty of them, but they pandered to them anyway. They pandered to that base anyway. They coddled that base and they winked at them because otherwise they will not win elections. They cannot get the most votes. They have to have that base. You cannot, as a Republican, win without pandering to the shittiest amongst you because they don't exist otherwise.
Now, to be fair, because obviously I don't think he has any fans here, but there is something about Donald Trump. I don't think Donald Trump is a smart man. I actually think his IQ is closer to 100 than it is to 130.
I agree.
He does, and I mean a lot closer to 100, but he does have a certain Machiavellian brilliance that I don't even think he's aware of. We were talking about the CNBC interview that he did today, but yesterday or the day before he was being interviewed by someone else, and he came up with a line that I find absolutely brilliant in how stupid it is, because he actually said Joe Biden is not entering the White House until he proves he got 80 million votes, which is an impossible standard to put anyone to. And yet, when he says it, 70 million people were nodding in agreement.
Even when people talk about Donald Trump as being like a brilliant marketer or whatever and anything like that, okay, everybody here has worked in entertainment and show business long enough to know there are a lot of really stupid people who are good at that kind of thing. There's a lot of great actors. I mean, great actors who are great at their craft and their comic timing and their dramatic abilities and all that. And they've won awards. And we all know we've met them. And some of them are just dumb as a box of rocks. Some of them are they're great actors. They're great at pretending. But as far as actual coherence with the world around them, some of them are just stupider than dirt. Okay.
Well, that's the thing about when someone is an idiot, because you look at what he
No.
You look at what he did in Arizona.
Yeah.
His party was telling him for the longest time, stop saying disparaging things about John McCain. Stop, because you are going to lose Arizona. He is their native son. They love him more than they've loved any politician, and he refused. But on another point, I don't know. Did you guys ever see the movie A Face in the Crowd?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you guys
Andy
seen
Griffith.
it? Did you guys
with Andy Griffith?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
He's a fraternity brother of mine. I'm not kidding, by the way.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
Well, because that movie is so brilliant, and the movie was made in the late 1950s, I think. And it is Donald Trump. It's exactly grifter. I mean, difference is that he came from money, but that same mindset and just how the world, the country just glommed onto him and just adored him and thought he was amazing. And he was evil. He was an evil guy who just became very, very famous for being famous.
At this point, we had a little technical glitch and lost a couple of sentences, but we segued into a conversation about a movie that Ward has written that is coming out soon, and it's starring Michael Pare, who also starred in Streets of Fire and Eddie and the Cruisers. And this is that conversation as it played out.
Talking about what was a better film, Streets of Fire or Eddie and the Cruisers, but it's Streets of Fire. Come on.
I'm going to tell you a weird little thing, man. I've never seen Streets of Fire.
Streets of Fire is so good. Willem Dafoe.
I've heard it's great. My whole life I've heard it's really good. I've never watched it.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Sue, let me ask you, do you remember from the Improv a guy named Larry Gross who used to hang out at the bar?
Absolutely.
Wrote Streets of Fire.
I was going to say he wrote that. Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
So Sue and I are dropping the name. There you go.
Holy shit.
Did he write 48 Hours too? What did he wrote? He wrote another really big movie.
Okay, so you guys would know Larry Gross did write 48 Hours.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, he wrote some pretty good stuff. He wrote the screenplay to Prozac Nation, which was based on a book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We Don't Live Here Anymore, which was in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
The Virginian, which is based on a popular book.
Sure.
He wrote True Crime, Clint Eastwood film. Remember that?
Yeah.
He wrote the remake of Rear Window with Christopher Reeve. It was a TV movie with Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember that.
It was 1998. It was 1998, and it was Christopher Reeve's first acting gig after his paralysis.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember how the original Rear Window, like Jimmy Stewart broke his leg and he's in a wheelchair?
Broke both of his legs.
In the TV movie, Christopher Reeve is in a car accident and is paralyzed from the neck down. And it's actually really good. It's a good, because it's called Rear Window, it's kind of, you compare it to the original, but it's a good TV movie thriller, and Christopher Reeve plays the guy in it.
Did they follow what the original was, like with the Raymond Burr character? And
I mean, sort of. It's he witnesses a murder across the way.
Okay,
right. So in that case, it's exactly the same. But that Larry Gross guy, he also wrote another 48 Hours.
Oh, that wasn't as good.
No, but he did. He did a lot of really good stuff.
He was just this weird looking guy that I knew at the bar at the Improv that I was jealous of because he got movies made.
He was kind of a ratty kind of looking guy, looked like he never showered.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I mean, he's still working. There's some film in Italian that came out where he's credited as scenario and dialogue. And then it says he has an upcoming project coming out called Turbulent Souls.
How did this become the Larry Gross Show?
Okay, I just read he has an uncredited contribution to Ralph Bakshi's Cool World, which is probably one of the worst films ever, but it's worth seeing because it's Ralph Bakshi and it's got Brad Pitt in it.
It's a cool movie to look at.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's
a combination of 2D animation and live action, right?
Yeah, it came out right after Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but for like adults. Like, what would happen if you had sex with a cartoon?
Charles Fleischer, speaking of people who hung out at the Improv, he was the voice in Who Framed Roger.
Yep. To our audience, thanks for listening. If you like our podcast, please link us on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And also check out our Facebook group that we talked about, Open Fire Politics. We're all there. We'd love to see you there too. And as we go into the new month, Greg, what projects do you have coming up?
So, because this is what my life has become, my wife and I had a date today. We gave blood together. That is the only way that we can exchange fluids in public without without people calling the police on us anymore. That is what our lives have become now. Which I recommend, please go give blood. It's a good cause. Blah, 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 blah. And 2, stop calling the police on people having sex in public. That last part's kind of awkward, and I'm so glad my wife doesn't actually listen to this podcast.
You think he's got it bad? I have to fly down to Cincinnati once a week to spend time with his wife while people call the cops on us.